All right, Jules, let's get into this more because a wise man once told me that we always need to look at football games kind of in threes. The last match, this match, and the next match. And all these things are somehow interrelated. And if we're going to continue with Barcelona, the last match at the weekend was a match where obviously he's affected at the back because there's no Koundé, there's no Araujo. But he played Christensen and Piqué. He made some changes. They weren't great, apart from the goal from Lewandowski. But it looked as if, right, we're thinking ahead. We're preparing for this game. We're going to get the right formula for this game. We did not see the right formula in this game. You said this one's on Xavi.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I think he failed to find a way of beating this Inter team by playing better, by creating more chances. Clearly, the obsession with Dembele, which, I mean, I love Ousmane Dembele, it's not a problem here, but there's a point where, one, is too predictable. Two, I'm not sure how effective 34 or 32 crosses in a game against the beast that Bastoni, Skriniar and De Vrij are, especially in the air, is if you're Barcelona. I mean, you know, you've got, I said on the FC show yesterday, and maybe I was being a bit mean, but like, what is this, Stoke City? Like Tony Pulis, Stoke City? Do you have Peter Crouch in the box and you can throw the ball, or, or Marcelo Salas? You don't have that. It's not Lewandowski who's going to win every single header against Bastoni, De Vrij and Skriniar, let alone Gavi and Pedri and Ansu Fati and those kind of players, right?
Well, I think especially when you have the ballers, as the kids say, in the middle of the park in terms of Pedri and Gavi.
Yeah.
The people who are able to, to go and kind of pass around people. I know it's difficult. You've got three tall center backs, right? So obviously you use the flank.
But five as well.
Sorry?
And five in midfield for Inter too. So it's a very, very...
But you can also, there are other ways to play it. You look at what Pep does with the cutbacks.
Completely.
That seems to be the obvious one. You also have the option of Kessié, who, different player, maybe bring him on the bench. He brings that physicality with the run from midfield and the finish. It just became very predictable. I'm also wondering whether, in certain cases, you're also not better off switching the wings here, playing Dembele on the other wing.
Yeah, although you can't cross the ball then. That's the only thing. Well, you can,
know,
but not as good as on the right side.
But he can come inside and shoot, at least give you something different.
Yeah, you're right. But that's what I thought they liked creativity, they liked ideas, they liked a plan. And clearly the only plan, again, was Dembele. There was how can you have no plan B with the players that you have? How did they prepare for this game? Because you could have easily said, okay, I guarantee you, Inter have the back to the wall, is that you said?
Yeah, back to the wall.
Back to the wall. This is what they're going to do. They're going to be so solid. They're going to be quite deep. They're going to be so compact. They're going to wait for Barca to come in the center of the pitch, which is what Barca do, really. We could have all foreseen that. And yet, Xavi seemed like he had not prepared for the game at all. And I was just very disappointed. And maybe he would have been happy with the draw. And maybe in the end, they're unlucky not to have got a draw with the Dumfries handball, especially. But I just thought overall it was not good enough. And now it's him who have their back to the wall because they have to go back home next week against Inter, where Inter will easily be happy with the draw and play for a draw in the same way that they did this week. And then if Barca don't win that game, they're in big trouble and it's Europa League for them again.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute, how this group might play out. But I want to bring it back to Inter for a second, especially in terms of the choices he made in the middle of the park, right? So Brozovic goes out. Brozovic is the playmaker, the point guard, right? At the weekend, he played Aslani, and I think it was Aslani's first start of the season. Aslani's a young player, comes from Empoli, is a very talented player. Inzaghi, when it comes to young players, like some old school Italian coaches, always like, oh no, I'm worried he gets criticized. He plays Aslani in that role. Inter lose to Roma. Simone Inzaghi says, well, funny that we lost because this was actually one of our best performances of the season. Yeah. Some might dispute
Marco
that.
said that as well.
But I can assure you, Aslani was not the problem.
Yeah.
Aslani was not the problem in that game. But the perception still, young player, Barcelona, Champions League, can he be trusted? We need to break out of this mentality. Yeah. Every single freaking week, we see teams from Germany, from England, from Spain, not being fearful with the kids. Let the guy play.
I know.
And look, in the end, it worked out for him. But you're right. He played Mkhitaryan instead in midfield. You can say, look, it's a five-man midfield. Well, it's only a 5-man midfield, but it's not really because Di Marco and the other wing back are back chasing the wingers, right? That midfield, Barella, Çalhanoğlu, and Mkhitaryan, these aren't 3 Roy Keanes there, right? I mean, Barella will put himself about.
Yeah, they would have.
But it's not natural for Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan to just sit and defend and break up play. No. So I actually thought that midfield, that is where they were vulnerable. And you can play through that midfield. Yeah, look, I'm not having a go with them. They sacrificed themselves. They were heroic. Yeah, but they weren't doing, they were out of position for what they naturally do.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
And to me, that is a big mistake that Xavi made, like a serious mistake, because you could have run them ragged in the middle of the park, and you do that enough times, as we've seen, as Xavi knows from the history of Barcelona and the position that he played. When you have that, you have the ability, you move players out of position, that's how you create chances.
Yeah, and Barca made it easy for Inter and that midfield and that defense to cope with. I mean, I think they had 72% of the ball in the first half and did nothing with it, Barca. I was just very surprised and very disappointed. They've looked good in La Liga. They're top for the first time in 2.5 years. They haven't lost in 18 or 19 games away from home in the league. And I just expected much better. Even with the injuries that they have, I expected much, much better from them. And we can go back again to fullbacks. Are the fullbacks good enough? Whether it's Balde or Marcos Alonso or Jordi Alba, and then on the right-hand side, Sergio Roberto, whoever you want. Because at some point, when you play against a block like the one from Inter, you also need a lot from your fullback that they didn't get in that game.
And you need the ability to overlap. I mean, as you know, I'm a Marcos Alonso fan. I don't know to what degree Marcos Alonso fits in this Barcelona, in the sense that you can say, yeah, he's different, so that's why he's there, because he gives you something different from Jordi Alba. Sure. But is it different at the cost of essentially creating a situation where defensively you're always going to be vulnerable? He's a tremendous crosser of the ball, tremendous header of the ball. He's not the greatest passer in tight areas. He's not super fast. Yeah. He's never going to run past people.
No.
These are choices, and I thought in this one, he kind of made the wrong choices.
Yeah.
Projecting forward in this group, before that, I want to get your take on this, because people in Barcelona got all bent out of shape. Alessandro Bastoni, who I love, he or whoever runs his social media published a picture on Instagram, which, it's an action photo of Bastoni during the game, and it kind of, shows him, he's kind of like standing up and looking intense and everything, and, celebrating the victory. But if you look on the side of the picture, you can see kind of Gavi's head, and Gavi's kind of, he's either falling or he's like on the ground. He's got a really unhappy face. And if you look closely, it certainly looked to me as if he's also kind of pulling him by the shirt as he's right now.
Yeah.
So people say, it's disrespectful to Gavi and so on. He's trolling him.
Now, first of all, a bit like that.
Okay. This doesn't fit Bastoni's personality.
No,
at
true.
All, right?
No, it's not.
If it were at the Matrix, I would say, he meant that and he loved it, right? Or it's Sergio Ramos, I would say, 1,000%. But this is not. But is it really that disrespectful? You can't. There are other players.
How many photos do you think Bastoni could pick from that night? 1,000. Where him celebrate with his teammates, celebrate after the goal, celebrate after the win. In the dressing room, he could pick anything, really. You can imagine they would have hundreds of him. And he picked the one where you could easily make fun of Gavi, because Gavi doesn't look great and he's on the floor, he's falling, and Bastoni looks so dominant, and you're like, really? Why?
Gavi does look like a child in the picture. Right?
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. But you're right, it doesn't really fit Bastoni's personality and elegance in general and all of that. So I did wonder. I was a bit like, wow, come on.
The stock answer here is that they use this for motivation and the return leg. But I'm curious, if you're Bastoni now, if you were advising us, let's say he's ringing us up and it's Alessandro, what's that? And he says, guys, I didn't mean it. My cousin who runs my social media, whoever it was, picked the picture. I wasn't really paying attention. I proved it. Should you apologize to Gavi? Should you issue another statement? Does that keep this thing back in the media unnecessarily? Or do you just kind of move on?
Yeah, you move on maybe. You don't want to give it
Do you
more legs now, I guess.
You text Gavi and be like, hey, by the way.
Yeah, maybe
I don't know
that's
if you're
the right
upset.
thing to do. You're right. I think that's probably better. Call him and say, listen, it was a mistake, or it was this, or it was that.
Okay, so Bastoni, in case you're wondering, this is how you handle it. This is how I would handle it.
Yeah,
Free
definitely.
advice on the Gab and Juls show.
Yeah, yeah.
Just message Gavi.
Yeah.
I'm sure,
This is
I'm
his
sure-
number, +34 619.
Yeah. Message Gavi and say, listen, I don't know if you were upset or if it's just me, making something bigger than it was. I really didn't mean to troll you in the game, after the game. I probably shouldn't have chosen that picture.
Because you don't want to have that reputation either. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. And just leave it there. And you do it privately,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Do it publicly. Bad idea. And just don't tell anybody you've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.